My background is predominantly operations, either maintenance. Like, first half of my career was in traffic. The second half of my career was in maintenance operations. So until about a year ago, I guess I did some things relative to asset management. I don't think I thought about it, in that terms. But about a year ago, the Commissioner Joe McDonald, asked me to take on this challenge, and it's a pleasure to be here. One of the things it's nice to know that some of the things that keep me up at night, or I wake up in the night, start thinking about them. Pretty much everybody in here, I think, has thought about them too. I got a long list of questions and outreach I need to do, following this meeting. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I thought things were bad in New York. I feel a lot better about going back to New York now. But thanks for having me. The transportation asset management at New York State DOT is not really new. Many of our divisions, offices, and employees at DOT have been using elements of transportation asset management over the last 20 years. In particular, we've had a long-standing process to be able to do network-level modeling on pavement and bridge conditions, including doing some asset trade-offs, and we've been doing that since the early 2000s. In addition to that, for the last 20 or so years, our 11 regions have been developing and submitting generally 5-year capital programs. As part of that capital program development, they're required to use the models, our network level tools models, to sort of predict what their investment decisions are going to mean for future conditions. So we've been doing that quite a long time. In 2003, the New York State DOT announced that it would formally implement transportation asset management as the department's infrastructure management strategy. It was announced, it's all documented. I actually found out in prepping for this presentation that there was a transportation asset management FHWA case study on New York State DOT in 2003, which I was not even aware of until someone pointed it out to me. So we've been doing transportation asset management, or elements of that, for quite some time. So why the sudden interest or renewed interest in transportation asset management? We had a lot of momentum in the early 2000s. Some people were really using transportation asset management for decision making. Somewhere between 2003 and last year, it really lost its momentum at the DOT. And we really don't know why that was. There's been a lot of things that have been transpired over the last almost 10 years. We had early retirement incentives in 2003 and 2010. We've gone from an organization of about, I think it was about 11,000 in 2003. We're at about 8,700 total organization right now, and with the passage of the recent budget, we're supposed to lose another 100 positions this year, predominantly through attrition. In 2003, some of our key transportation asset management staff retired. Actually, the gentleman, John Chufan, that was a leader in a lot of the stuff, retired in 2003, and we just have lost the momentum from that. Some people talk, I've heard about Missouri going through organization, other states have gone through organization. We had a huge effort shortly after the early retirement incentive to reorganize the DOT. Asset management was a critical piece of that. That transformation effort, it was called transformation, turned out to be a tremendous failure. There was resistance from everybody, so that sort of hurt the organization, the ability to do transportation asset management. Like other states, we have a very stovepipe organization. We have 11 regional offices. We've got engineering, we've got operations, we've got policy and planning. Transportation asset management in the past did not cut across the organization. It was predominantly thought of as a planning function run out of our policy and planning division. It really did not have much interaction with the other divisions that exist in the department. As I mentioned before, we've had program update instructions that tried to be all things to all people. They tended not to be focused. They didn't have clear investment strategies defined, or in some cases, like the previous program update, it targeted specific assets. During our previous program update, our goal was to try to maintain the percent of deficient bridges in the system. That was the goal. That was the number one goal for the program. That resulted in some real unintended consequences. So if you're going to just focus on your deficient bridge list, you're going to do major rehabs and replacements on all your bridges that are deficient, regardless of where they are. There's going to be consequence to that. And the initial part of that program, we were replacing structures that were safe, rated deficient, on some fairly low volume roads, sometimes load posted without really any economic impact. Consequently, we really starved pavements. Our pavements have been starved tremendously over the last few years. We did have a program review process. It was our asset management professionals had an opportunity to review programs, offer input. In general, that input was ignored. And it went so far as the regions never even got to hear the input back from our pavement managers, our bridge managers, and things of that nature. So, it really didn't help progress the program. In fact, as part of this program update process, and I didn't write this down because I knew this was going to be public, but one of our former regional directors who went on to be one of our assistant commissioners was famous for quoting that he loved the way the program update process worked, because you could basically propose any program you wanted and it would get approved. You could do anything you wanted. So we've had a lot of issues in New York State, and the last one is that we went from a fairly centrally controlled organization when I started, and over the last 15 years in particular, we became extremely decentralized. So based upon all that, with 11 regions, you can just imagine what you can expect to get from 11 different regions when there's very little guidance, and anybody can propose anything they want and get their program approved. So it's really not a new way forward, it's a different way forward. Oh, by the way, I apologize for this. I don't know why this is happening, this gray on the screen. It happened to be last week on this presentation. When it's on my computer, it's not there. As soon as I give it to somebody else, hand it off, it does this, but anyway. This is really a bit of a different way forward, and I'm not gonna talk a lot about the technical stuff. For some of you that have heard me speak before, I'm really not a technical guy. I like the data and stuff people provide to me, but that's why we have staff that are really, really good at those types of things. And so I'm not going to talk about the technical stuff. I'm more going to talk about the process to try to integrate asset management into capital investment decisions. But as I mentioned about a year ago, our Commissioner, Joe McDonald, challenged me and several of my coworkers from across the state to review the department's current asset management and capital investment strategies in light of the many challenges we face. Our Commissioner, if you're not familiar with New York, we have a governor that's been in office for just over a year, Andrew Cuomo. He appointed a new commissioner about 15 months ago, Joe McDonald. I don't know how New York is viewed outside of New York, but inside New York and working for Andrew Cuomo and his staff, we have a common saying that we're going at light speed with our hair on fire. That's the way they're very aggressive and they expect results, and that is actually a good thing because it really generates a lot of interest and really pushes the envelope in trying to move things ahead. One of the things our commissioner indicated, she was asked early in her tenure what she wanted to leave as a legacy when her time as commissioner of DOT was done. And one of the things that she said was, when I leave, I want to have a comprehensive asset management system in place that will live on long after I'm gone. So with that, I was given the challenge. Why? We all know why. Transportation is essential to a vibrant economy and a sustainable society. A lot of us are in the same boat. Transportation in New York and across the country is facing a confluence of challenges. We have aging, deteriorating infrastructure, and we have fewer resources at a time when the condition of our transportation system requires more. We've got more issues than we have money to fix. From my perspective, or from New York's perspective, there's only one and only reason to implement transportation asset management, and that is to drive all of your investment decisions. Given all the issues we have, we need to implement those best practices. So how do we get there? Set up a task force. Comprehensive asset management capital investment is a lot to say, so it's a lot easier to say CAMC. That's the acronym that we use, CAMC. This task force was comprised of multidisciplinary staff from across the state. We had regional representation. We had every program area in our headquarters was part of the task force, and we just basically went and started looking at what we needed to do to implement asset management. I find my spot. We assessed the state of asset management across the agency, where it was working, where it wasn't, where we needed to go. We reviewed the literature. We identified best practices in other states. We benchmarked other states. We spoke to people in Oregon and Utah and North Carolina about their programs. We used that information to develop an asset management framework and process to tie our asset management into investment and develop comprehensive program update instructions into a process to develop, use transportation assets to develop and execute our next capital program. So what was some of the components of that, some of the things that we did? One of the early things we did was we established our Forward 4 guiding principles. The primary focus for our new program update process was on preservation and safety of our existing system. Basically, we all recognize we need to keep what we already have safe and functional, and to ensure that we were making good decisions in our efforts to preserve and enhance the safety and condition of the transportation system. We identify these 4 guiding principles: preservation first, systems not projects, maximize return on investment, and make it sustainable. And inherent in all of our investment decisions is protecting public safety. Under these principles, our highest priority is preserving the functionality of the existing highway system. Our critical links must remain safe, functional, and provide connectivity to our customers. And to do this, we need to consider and prioritize our projects in a manner that treat them as key links in the system. And really what systems not project means to me is we have to make sure that we're effective, that we are doing the right things on the system for the overall benefit of the state. Given the significant needs of our system, we have established a strategy to invest in a way that produces the greatest possible return on investment. A large part of this approach is an emphasis on proper management of our assets with the appropriate treatment at the appropriate time and the appropriate location. So while systems not projects is effective, we need to make sure we're efficient. When we decide we're going to treat a critical link or a structure, we want to make sure that we're doing the right treatment, the best cost-effective treatment to sustain that asset. A sustainable approach to programming considers the value of our assets as they benefit the public, economy, and the environment now and into the future. Our asset management framework and process, sort of displayed here, you probably can't see it, but we established an asset management framework and process to support consistent decision-making with a focus on preservation and built-in measures of accountability to ensure that the state receives the largest return on investment and long-term public benefit. Essentially, many of the regions have had asset management teams. We haven't always called them that. They have asset management teams for structures, and when we talk about structures in New York, we talk about bridges, overhead sign structures, and culverts, large culverts. Our large culverts are 5 feet or bigger. Most regions have some form of asset management team. We look at pavements, we look at system safety and optimization, and we introduced this new concept of sustainability teams to kind of look at the economy and the environment. One of the things, the previous review teams that came together, now that was referring to as statewide asset management teams for those things, they used to come together to review programs. This time, we used those statewide teams to develop the guidance and the direction, and they were deeply involved in the review of the programs. Above that is our comprehensive program team, which I co-chair with a gentleman that's responsible for overseeing our regional planning and program managers. And it's basically consists of him and I and the chairs of each of the team. We have not updated this. We do have a modal services management team that's also part of this, because most of the multimodal programs are managed out of the headquarters. And then ultimately report to the commissioner and the rest of executive management. The intent here is really to look at consistent decision-making and making sure that the regions are accountable for developing a program that meet our needs. How do we do that? As I mentioned, in the past, our 11 regional offices produced programs that were significantly different in approach and execution. These new instructions we consider a unifying strategy that sets preservation targets for bridges, culverts, and pavements based upon need and adjusted based on planning targets. The overarching objective is preservation strategy is to slow the rate of deterioration through low-cost effective treatments. Essentially what we did was, here's our hierarchy of priorities with investments. We expect people to fund demand response. We have bridge flags, we have floods, we have guide rail hits. You have to fund those things to keep the system safe. The second priority is preservation. And basically what we did for each region was, using our needs models for bridge, pavement, and culvert, we determined what each region's preservation needs were. We don't have enough money to address 100% of the preservation needs, so the target was set at 70%. Each region in developing their program had to spend at least 70% of their money to meet their preservation needs. In some regions, they really didn't have enough money to even do that. In those cases, we expected them to spend 50% of their money on preservation. Following that, for the first time, we expected systematic improvements to enhance safety. We're entering into the field of centerline rumble strips. We expect each region to install at least 50% of their qualifying highways over the 5-year period, and then continue to have our address safety at our high accident locations, through widenings and realignments and things like that. Beyond that, beyond preservation, we have Beyond Preservation program, basically 2 categories: system renewal, which basically means replacements or major rehabs, in kind, and a term we're using, modernization, which is new facilities, expanding facilities, and things along those lines. And that's kind of the priority on how you spend your money. Everything beyond preservation had to be approved by the statewide asset management teams and the comprehensive program team and executive management. Out of 11 regions, 2 regions got their program approved right off the bat. New York City and the region I used to be in, which is one of the most rural, got it approved. The other 9 had to go back to the drawing board. In the second round, we had 8 out of the remaining 9, or excuse me, 6 out of the remaining 9 got approved, and just last week we finally approved the other 3 regions. And we still do have some beyond preservation projects that have not yet been approved, and they're principally local program projects. They're projects on the local system that we could not afford to do on the state system. Community renewal type projects, reconstructions, replacements of bridges that really have not yet been the end of their service life. So That discussion is going on this week. We turned the regions loose to meet with the local sponsors and the MPOs. So it'll be quite the interesting experience, I'm sure, in the regions when they tell people that you're not going to be able to progress your project. A couple of things, other things I just want to mention. Oh, here's one. Did it work? And what I used to say when I was putting this together was, preservation is a long-term strategy. You know, we might see a short-term drop in conditions. Well, as the way it turned out for us, it actually achieved the results. We thought, I wasn't sure it was going to work. It did. We did actually flatten the curve. We did slow down the rate of deterioration by adopting a preservation first strategy. And it worked so well that, like everybody else, we have a problem with jobs. Governor Cuomo said, these numbers don't reflect this, but we have a New York Works program. We're going to spend another $1.2 billion over the next 2 or 3 years on construction. Not all of it on the highway side, a lot with sanitary and water systems and dams and other things. But we are spending on the highway side about $250 million on pavement preservation additional this year, and $210 or $12 million to replace bridge decks on about 115 bridges. So we'll see a one-time bump in conditions. It'll be interesting to see if our strategies continue to work to kind of hold us up at that level. Planned outcomes, I've got a list that's, you know, like everybody else, we've got a list that's really, really long of things that we have to do in order to, we've gone from compliance, we've got our 11 regions in compliance now. We need to move to understanding and commitment. That's the number one mission that I have. It might help now that all the 11 regional directors are going to report to me, so that might make it a little bit easier. We'll see. But you know, we really need to take a look at you know, where we need to go, and you know, try to get this ingrained into the organization. That really is the objective. The only other thing I'll just mention is that the relative to planned outcomes, we have engaged Agile Assets to do our bridge data information system, and to do we've acquired licenses for all their modules, and they are going to be doing a gap analysis to see where we're going to go with their system. And we're going to have a couple people next week, a couple people that I work with, Brad Allen and Steve Wilcox, are going to be down in Austin meeting with Agile and the other users and help us move that along. So that's essentially it. I got a couple more slides, but you know, this is not a short-term thing. Beyond the short term, we all know where that came from. The literature was helpful, and all of your help was great too. So thanks.
All right, thank you.